Well, welcome everyone to this session of Administrator Issues and Updates on April 1st, 2025. County Administrator Gary Schmidt, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair Roberts, thank you. Commissioner Savas is in Salem at a State Transportation Committee meeting, will not be here this morning. There is a quorum present. Roll call. Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner West.
Here.
Chair Roberts.
Here. Thank you. Gary, would you please introduce the first agenda item for us?
Thank you. First item is Fora Health Recovery Center Subrecipient Agreement. There's a memo in your packet. This is to prepare you for an upcoming consent agenda item. Mary Rumbaugh, Director of Health, Housing, Human Services, will present. Go ahead, please, Mary.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Yes, I'm here this morning to just give you a quick high-level overview of this agreement. So you do not need to be reminded, but I will remind you that as part of our 2023 resolution to address addiction, homelessness, and mental health crisis, as well as our September 2023 Addiction Recovery Summit, we were directed to really create a recovery campus. And in September 2024, we issued a notice of funding opportunity soliciting proposals for the development, design, construction, and operation of the Recovery Center located at 15301 Southeast 92nd Avenue in Clackamas. And as you know, H3S did purchase that property in December of 2024 as well. So Fora Health, formerly known as DePaul Treatment Centers, was selected to receive the grant. They will be partnering with Eldon and Company, Holst Architect, and Walsh Construction. The agreement is in actually 4 phases for design, development, and pre-construction. There's schematic design, design development, construction documents, and permitting and bidding, and that's what this contract will be for. You'll continue to receive monthly updates from Cindy Becker on the progress of the Recovery Campus, as well as progress on this specific contract. And we will obtain any approvals through in front of this board before we move to the next phases of each part of the agreement. Any questions?
Great. Commissioners looking for any questions? Ben.
I was just turning on my mic. Sure, I'll make a comment. Thank you. This is exciting. I love to see this moving forward. There are really great conversations even happening regionally that's quite inspirational about what we're doing here. This is something that the region really hasn't seen. It's a new approach, and I'm really excited about it, and your staff is doing a great job, and so I can't wait for the day that we say we're going to break ground. So I know that's looming in the near future, but we're really, really excited, so thank you.
Thank you.
Anything, Martha?
No, I think this is a great step forward. Yeah.
Thank you, and we're definitely all looking forward to seeing this move forward, and thanks for your hard work on that.
Of course.
So we sure appreciate it, Mary.
Thank you.
So if there's no other objections, we'll advance this item to the consent agenda on April 10th, business meeting. And Gary, what's up next?
Great, thank you. Next is a request for a letter of support for the Estacada Lake Shore Trail Grant application. Tonya Holowetsky, Public and Government Affairs Director, will present. There's a memo and draft letter in your packet. Go ahead, please, Tonya.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. We're here again for another letter of support. This time, we're asking the board to approve a letter in support of the City of Estacada's grant proposal to fund Phase 1 of the Lakeshore Trail and Water Access Project. The city is seeking grant dollars from the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department to construct Phase 1 of the project. And to bolster its application, the city has requested a letter of support from Clackamas County. In Phase 1 of the project, it includes the construction of a trail and viewing platform above Estacada Lake, located near the downtown area. Future phases of the work will consist of the construction of stairs and gangways leading to an in-water dock. And these proposed improvements will have an economic benefit to Estacada, since they have experienced decreased traffic to downtown and tourism-based businesses due to COVID-19 and the Riverside fire. The city hopes that the lakeshore water access construction will increase local business traffic and drawing on the water access traffic at other recreation facilities. So we recommend that you approve the letter in support of the city's project and grant application.
Great, thank you, Tanya. Colleagues, any questions or comments?
No, sounds great.
All right, if there's no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, Ben, can you do that? I move that, well, I will move it, that we help the city of Estacada and sign a letter in support of the city's grant proposal to fund Phase 1 of the Lakeshore Trail and Water Access Project.
Great. And is there a second?
It's fine.
I second.
Right. So Commissioner Schrader has moved to approve the letter of support. Commissioner West has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Clerk, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Tanya. Gary, what's up next?
Next is advisory board and commission appointments. Andrew, go ahead, please.
Mr. Chair, the Leaders for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council, staffed by Public and Government Affairs Department, currently has 11 openings on their commission due to term expirations. 19 total members are allowed with 3-year terms. Recruitment opened to the public in June of 2024 and closed in August of 2024. Through this recruitment process, 22 applications were received and interviews were conducted with 12 eligible applicants. 9 are recommended for appointment. 7 applicants are new and 2 applicants are currently serving on the board. The recommendation is as follows. April Flint Gerner to a first term ending 2027. Brandy Johnson to a first term ending 2027. Desiree Thomas to a first term ending 2027. Melissa Roy Hart to a first term ending 2027. Montgomery Starr to a first term ending 2027. Sandy B. Allman to a first term ending 2027. Sirius Bonner to a first term ending 2027. Lori Bender to a second term ending 2027. And Mike Foley to a third term ending 2027. The board could select other candidates or require further recruitment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, questions?
Yeah, I'm actually glad that we still have this group interested in helping us. I don't see it in ideological terms. I really see it as an opportunity to help people who have not had access, to get the access they need to be prosperous in our communities, in our county. The one group I always bring up is what we call the Canby Center at this point, who I have enthusiastically supported when we gave $600,000 worth of ARPA dollars to help them expand. And they serve people in the Canby community that have been underserved for a very long time. And their model is wonderful. They do financial literacy, they do English as a second language programs, they help with food security, finding housing, and actually have peer-to-peer help for youngsters who are new to the local school system there. And to me, they're an exemplary body that really has the kinds of outcomes. So no matter what we call it, and I know sometimes the name gets a little hot, people under the collar, I always want to focus on, really you have to think about outcomes and letting people have appropriate access so they can be citizens and participants in our community. So I am going to move that we appoint these folks to this committee and ask for a second.
All right. Commissioner West?
I'm not seconding.
All right. So I will open it up for discussion. I know you.
Yeah,
have
that's
gone
fine. In principle, I agree with absolutely everything Commissioner Schrader said. I just don't feel like the work that we've seen come out of DEI committees is doing that. I think often and almost always, especially in this state and region, they are highly divisive and political and ideologically driven. I think in Clackamas County, we have to promote classic liberal American values, a good functioning government over ideology, and we always look to hire based on merit and competency and not continue to focus on people's immutable traits. In our past, our EDI department is what it used to be called, not DEI, but it's called EDI. In many ways, I felt, and there was a lot of evidence to this based on communication, that it was very divisive and very much focused on some of the more controversial, ideologically driven race essentialism that has not been good for our community. Fairness, it looks to measure fairness on the equality of outcomes rather than the equality of opportunity. And I think that is wrong. And so I want to hear the voices from all people in our county. I want them to all have access. I have a long history for fighting for equal opportunity in this state, but I don't believe that this is the most productive way to do it. And it has a history of promoting race essentialism, which I think is not correct, or telling certain groups of our population that based on their immutable traits that they are victims, and that others based on their immutable traits that they are victimizing, or if you have the wrong skin color, then you're born with some original sin that you can never repair from because it's inherent in you based on your skin color. And if based on your skin color, you could also just be inherently a victim. I think that's divisive. We don't do it in my own family. I didn't fight for that when I fought for marriage equality in this state. And I don't want to see it in my county. So for that, I won't be supporting this moving forward. I've been very consistent since being elected. I know that this may not be popular for everybody, but I'm being principled here. And with that said, I just think we have a different perception about how these things are playing out, Commissioner Schrader, because I agree with everything you have said. I just don't think it's playing out that way in this department or in this advisory group.
Yeah. And I really appreciate your comments, Commissioner West, and I understand where you're coming from, but I think that we have the possibility with this group, if we can move it to what I see as tangible outcomes, no matter what, because we can't argue that there are reasons for some people who don't have access. And so to me, I see it more as a prosperity initiative. And so if I was to work with this group, what I would talk to them about is, okay, one of the things we've been working on at the National Association of Counties is what we call a prosperity initiative. And what we've done is look to see across the board as a cohort what makes communities and individuals prosperous, regardless of race, color, or anything like that. And what we're finding out is actually pretty self-evident. It's about housing. It's about the education piece. It's about food security. It's about housing. It's those particular outcomes. So I don't care if it's whatever it's called, if it has those kinds of outcomes. And we have data to show that once all of those needs are met for our communities, that's when people move out of generational poverty, no matter what the reason. For example, in West Virginia, you could argue that there's quite a bit of generational poverty that I've been working on with one of my colleagues there because of poor communities. It wasn't necessarily based on anything like an immutable trait. So I see it more that way, and I see this group, from my perspective, as an opportunity to take some of that work we've been doing at NACO on generational, moving people up the economic ladder and implementing that as an outcome. I'm really trying to move it away from, not that I can do this personally because I can't, I know that, but I'm trying to look at it more from that perspective so we can move it away from the divisiveness because of how other ways that it has been framed. So in a sense, I'm really trying to reframe this in a way, in a positive direction, not feed into the division that we sometimes see within our communities with this. So that's kind of my intent. But I do respect what you have to say, and as good friends, I know we can respectfully, but I'm just telling you, that I just wanted to make it clear that's kind of my intent with this. And I am working very hard with my cohort. We'll be working with them today. And I've been assigned from the National Association of Counties to work with Union County on a prosperity initiative for access as well, because one of the things we're doing is finding communities in other counties in our own state that want to really work on generational poverty. I think if we frame it like this, it'll give it a positive influence and not be a negative one. So that's why that's just to give you, that's my take on it.
Yes, go ahead.
So we totally agree. I just feel like that this group is specifically rooted in race-based politics, and that I can't support. I think across the entire country, we've had decades of race-based politics just not working out well, and that we should look at people as not based on these immutable traits. But this group inherently is designed to kind of operate within that framework. Socioeconomic status is a much more fair and appropriate way to look at where people are at, Commissioner. Like, you mentioned a lot of things that we have mutually supported and championed together, but we just want people who need the help regardless of where of their immutable traits to get the help that they deserve and morally should have. And I just think that this is rooted in race-based politics, so that to me, that's fundamentally flawed. Everything you've just said, though, about how to move forward, there's no daylight between us. That's just not how this work has been being done. You know, when we cared for many foster children in our home, the trauma that those children experienced were not often differentiated by their immutable traits or race, because I had very many traumatized children of all different skin colors in my home. And at the end of the day, it's a lot of that they just need to get the support that they can be helpful and heal within a community. And I just think that the most inappropriate way to do that is through race-based politics. And so that's why I won't be supporting this. I know we're missing a commissioner. I know it dies without my second, but I don't know where Commissioner Savas is on this, but I feel pretty passionately about not supporting race-based politics and policy initiatives. But I do want to help those that are in need and have need that support.
And I think from my perspective, that's kind of what I'm trying to do as well, as having, I have a mixed race family, and I understand that. What I'm trying to do is to really move it away from that piece of it that people seem to be uncomfortable, and really move it to what I think would be the beneficial way to work with this committee. And I would like the chance to try and do that. Does that make sense? And I understand if you don't support.
I think where we're at now, and I'll turn to Gary here in just a second, but number one, we're a commissioner short already, and then I wasn't aware Paul was not going to be here today, so I think right now we'll table this discussion. It's very important, and wait till Paul's comes back. So Gary, did you have any other
That was
comments?
my suggestion. Even if there was a second, there's not enough votes to pass this today. Let's just table it and bring it back when there's 4 commissioners seated.
Okay,
You
great.
can have this discussion and a decision. And if I may, this is an advisory board to you commissioners. If you want to see them work on something different, then just tell them. Just tell them. I'm glad to hear your feedback. But with that, we'll table the item until all 4 commissioners are present.
And thanks for disagreeing agreeably, Ben. I appreciate it.
It's easy.
Yeah. Gary, what's up next?
All right, thank you. Next, review of your business meeting agenda for this Thursday, April 3rd, 2025 at 10 a.m. You have a public hearing on a boundary change for sanitary sewer and stormwater services. You have a lengthy consent agenda, both for Clackamas County and the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. A reminder, we are putting items directly on consent agenda, so if there's any item here that you have questions about, if you'd please let me know prior to Thursday so I may have staff present in the room to answer your questions. With that, the final item for issues is Commissioner Communications. We have notified staff we're moving all the afternoon policy sessions to this morning. So we're going to do those right after you finish Commissioner Communications so that we can streamline your schedule for the day.
Great.
Thank you, Gary. So Communication, I'll turn to my colleague to my right, Martha Schrader. Go ahead.
So we did have a break last week, but I wanted to let folks know what I was doing, as I've had opportunities to talk to Tim Cook at Clackamas Community College. I've also talked to the Lake Oswego School District, and I've also talked to the Oregon City School District. And what I've been looking at and speaking to them about is the National Association has a curriculum of governance and what counties are, what counties do. And I'm trying to work with our local school districts and the community college to set up an education program that really deals with, and I'll be developing the curriculum with the reading. I've already got the materials. I have the reading list. I'd like to start with kids, and I promise, Gary, if you would graciously let me move forward, that I would do the work. This is not going to be just saying, oh, policy advisor, watch this young person, okay, all day for me. I legitimately want to go ahead and do a curriculum that gets young people interested in public service and really understand the nature of counties and government in general, because we have a very unique history. So that's been great. I've gotten a positive response from everyone, so I spent my break compiling the materials and starting to write the whole curriculum plan to present. And I'm hopeful. Also, I have not yet gotten a hold of Portland State University, but Portland State also has an internship program that might be a feeder. And as part of this, the Women of NACO, the National Association of Counties, is also pulling together a youth program. We had our first students come out this last meeting that we had, the legislative meeting, and we had 2 students there who basically spoke about what they've learned about counties, where they're going to go, and we are putting together a national program that I hope the kids that maybe I get to work with, keep your fingers crossed, I'm really working hard to make this happen, will have a chance to hook into the Women of NACO and do their program in D.C., where they go to our legislative meeting, they get to meet their legislators, they get to go to the White House, things of that sort, and where they really have an opportunity to see counties across the nation in action. So I'm pretty excited about this. I personally want to thank Gary Schmidt for because I'm a risk taker, and you keep me making from making good risks, okay? And I want to thank everybody for doing that. I'm really looking forward to it. It's kind of energized me. And to make it really work, I got my teaching certificate renewed. So I have 3 endorsements: biology, English, and K-12 library media. So I'm probably going to take the civics test, see if I can add that to my list of teaching, because I miss it. Many know I was a school librarian, and we were all reduced in force, but if that hadn't happened, I'd still be in that K-6 spread teaching kids, and I would have been perfectly happy. Instead, I'm in the hurly-burly of political life some days, And other than that, I look forward to working with everybody, being back. I'm really excited about the Recovery Center, Ben. I think that's been your energy and time moving that ahead, and I can't wait to really make sure we get that going. And just, I don't know, Chair, I just want to say it's been a pleasure working with you as well. We've had some tough discussions. Absolutely. And there are going to be some potential bumps along the road, but I think we're going to get through it with our new commission. And we are getting applications. We're starting to review the applications to choose another commissioner here. Gary, what's the time frame with that, just for the public to know?
Applications close on Wednesday, April 9th by 5 p.m. Pacific time. And then you'll review those and have public interviews and hopefully appoint someone by the end of April. So you fast-track this to complete by the end of this month.
Okay, so we'll have an onboarding at the end of April, and I'm looking forward to that too. We have, I think, a really great number of applicants. How many are there right now?
16, 17 so far?
16, 17, and some really highly qualified people who are stepping up to the plate to help us be good commissioners in this county. So that's all I got.
Thanks,
Yay.
thanks,
Okay.
Martha. Commissioner West?
Thank you. I'll say some of my comments for Thursday. I'm really excited to see and heartened by some of the conversations happening around supportive housing services regionally. Super honored and to work with President Lynn Peterson to co-chair the task force to try to right the ship with the supportive housing service tax and how we deliver services to the vulnerable populations or community that struggle with homelessness, substance abuse disorder, behavioral health issues. I just got I don't think you guys know this, colleagues, but the metro area mayors have just called to have a meeting with me. I'll be meeting with, there's 12 of them across the region in the metro area, and they want to discuss our recovery-oriented system of care and how it's so much different than how like Multnomah County operates. We're actually starting to see a narrative shift a little bit across the West Coast, again, in kind of a different policy direction, one that we've been kind of working in within Clackamas County the last 2 years, but you're now seeing the intractable issues within San Francisco. They're looking more towards implementing part of their system to include recovery and treatment in a greater way, and in a more care continuum holistic way that includes the entire community. And it's really exciting to be able to help lead that conversation in the region from Clackamas County. I was just on the phone with, for, I don't know, it was like a 90-minute call with Counselor Juan Gonzalez out of Metro. He represents the Beaverton area district on the Washington County, and he was like, "Gosh, I can't remember on like the last time we had a really like co-chair from Clackamas County on a consequential." Like I was like, "I know," because we're like often we feel like a little overlooked over here. So it's an honor to be a part of that. Very collaborative with Lynn Peterson, the Metro president. We're really trying to rebuild the trust with the voters and really make some pretty like 180-degree like policy decisions to go and handle this in a different direction, so that we can be more accountable with the taxpayer dollars, more effective in the treatment and the care that people get and that they deserve and need. And Clackamas County, to be honest, is leading significantly throughout the region, and not just in Oregon. Like it's been noticed back in DC when I was there. It's been noticed up and down the West Coast. They're like, "Oh, how is Clackamas County this little pocket of excellence?" And I go, "Well, we just do it the Clackamas County way, a little different. We're not afraid to be independent and bold in our approaches." So that's very exciting. I'll have more to report. I'll let you guys know how the meeting with the mayors go. We have a very strong relationship with the supportive housing services with our cities in Clackamas County. We're hoping to help the other counties build that relationship with their cities. There's been tension in Washington County and Multnomah County with their cities, but I think, we've already kind of creatively shown how we can partner with them as stakeholders in this work. And so as we help people get the care they need, I'm really excited that it's our voice leading at the table in a way that I think is really consequential. And it's an honor to be able to serve at that capacity. So I'll update you guys on that further. I'm very excited by that in this meeting coming up with the regional mayors. And I'll try to do a good job articulating and showing how we've done things within our recovery-oriented system of care. Mary, your team, fantastic. Even Rod, before you, have been amazing partners in this. So thank you so much to Health and Human Services. Y'all are fantastic, and I love working with you guys. It gives me great joy. If it's the only thing I get to do that's this exciting as an elected official, I will be the happiest man ever, so thank you. So good. I think we're doing good things. I just wanted to update you guys with that as we deal with SHS, because I'll close with this. If we don't change the trajectory, if we are not regaining the trust and honest with voters, we will lose this critical funding, and it will be catastrophic. I cannot express that enough. And so we have to really get to work to quickly change the direction of how the region is perceived in this capacity. And we have to be honest about where we failed with the voters and then move forward in a different direction. And Clackamas County is helping to do that. Thank you, and I will leave it at that.
All right, thanks, Commissioner West. I'm going to hold most of my comments till Thursday as well. Just a quick update. Myself and my colleagues had a Board of County Commissioners retreat, kind of a first phase of our strategic planning. We have an external group called MFR that's doing a lot of community outreach. Want to make sure we're hearing from throughout the county about their concerns and priorities. And very exciting to kind of get that information and kind of bring it back. It really nicely folded into, yesterday I attended the mayor forum for all the mayors in the county and listening to their priorities, their goals and their challenges and concerns that they have. One of the questions was, what keeps you up at night? And, you know, some of the issues really are a little concerning, you know, one of which is had to do with steel and ordering pipes for water infrastructure needs and the cost of potentially tariffs that could really jeopardize their project. So there's really a lot going on. The cities are making really some incredible improvements, and hopefully we'll kind of roll all that into our overall strategic plan, making sure we're listening from everybody. Just a quick comment, I attended the NAMI National Comedy Night, great event. It's a wonderful organization. It supports those that struggle with mental illness, their families. I can't say enough positive things about it, and we'd encourage, you know, viewers to make sure to check out NAMI. Clackamas doing a great job. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Gary. We'll continue and cover some more issues for us. Gary?
Thank you. That concludes administrator issues and updates. We are now moving to your policy sessions that were scheduled for this afternoon. Your calendar always says all times are approximate. So I'm comfortable with moving the afternoon sessions to this morning because these meetings are recorded. They're online for anyone to observe and watch, and public does not comment during these meetings anyway. Staff, I get it. I'm sorry for the rigmarole for you. I'll do better on anticipating times in the future so you won't have to go through this, but I thank you for your flexibility. With that, your first policy session is Older Adults Social Services Division 2025-2029 Older Americans Act Area Plan. This is a general update for you to seek your feedback before the plan comes back to you at a business meeting for final adoption. Mary Rumbaugh, Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services, and Tracy Garrell, our new Social Services Division Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Go ahead, please.
Good morning again, Chair Roberts and Commissioners. As you may recall, now retired Social Services Division Director Brenda Durbin and I presented the draft plan for the 2025 to 2029 Older Americans Act Area Plan. It's always a mouthful, to you at a February 11th policy session. Since then, we have completed the required public comment period, and it is included in your packet of this session, along with the final draft of the plan. We hope in this brief time together to answer any further questions you may have, and as County Administrator Schmidt indicated, we're hoping to seek approval to place this on the consent agenda for approval at the April 10th board business meeting. We do have a very brief presentation, so I will turn this over to our new Social Services Division Director, Tracy Garrell, to add a few comments before we give it back over to you. Tracy.
Thank you, Mary. Good morning, Commissioners, Chair Roberts. Really happy to be here, and thank you for inviting us back to talk a little bit more about the Older Americans Act Area Plan and just provide this update. So I'm going to go to this.
I think he drives.
Oh, you drive, okay.
Andrew's driving.
Okay. Okay, so just a real brief overview on what this is. This is a 4-year action plan. It's the framework for aging services in our county. It includes service goals and objectives for focus areas important to our community. And we are, in Clackamas County, the Social Services Division, we are the area agency on aging, and we're required every 4 years to gather input around the emerging issues and needs, which help us to really direct and prioritize the Older Americans Act funding, really tailored to meet the needs of our local community. So as Mary mentioned, we did a community needs assessment. This included a survey where we had about 1,200 respondents. About 80% of them were 60 years or older. We also had focus groups, listening sessions, and a lot of active engagement with our Aging Services Advisory Council and other community partners. So again, just reviewing this, we had the plan reviewed by our Aging Services Advisory Council. We had a public meeting that was held virtually so that we could have a number of participants on February 10th. We presented to the board on February 11th, and we had a public comment period that was open from February 10th through March 14th. So again, we're going to provide just a little bit more information for you today, and we hope to answer any questions you may have about the plan, as well as to obtain approval for the April 10th consent agenda. So some of the key issues that emerged during our needs assessment were older adults struggling to pay and meet their basic needs. They also expressed the need for home maintenance and repair, socialization opportunities, and then, as the slide indicates, access to transportation. And this is a really key need that helps older adults to maintain their health and social connections and really have access to a lot of the resources that they need to be able to remain independent in their communities. So a couple things about our transportation services. I'm going to talk about two basic sort of buckets of service. One are our demand response services, and this includes our Transportation Reaching People program, which is made up of both paid and volunteer drivers that are, we call it on demand because, or demand response, because basically participants will call for rides when they need them to get to things like medical appointments such as dialysis or to socialization events. We provide curb-to-curb rides to help seniors and people with disabilities get to access those services that they need. And then our community centers, we have 10 community centers throughout the county. They also have transportation services available to help, again, provide access to resources, socialization, community events for older adults and people with disabilities. And last year, we had almost 40,000 rides provided in this service array. We also have our public transportation services, and that includes our Clackamas County Connects, which are shuttle services. We call them the last mile shuttle, and they really provide that vital connection for residents who live in rural communities to get connected to the fixed route transportation services such as like TriMet or other services. We provide free connections to those regional transit services. So that we provided almost 35,000 rides with Clackamas County Connects. And then we have our Mount Hood Express, which is public transportation for residents in rural communities, generally east of Sandy up to Government Camp and Timberline. And again, we had 56,264 rides. And that particular service, there is a small fee for riders. But all of these services, again, really help to provide critical transportation services for older adults and people with disabilities. And our plan focus is both to maintain and expand accessible transportation and also to provide more outreach to increase awareness of these services. So we found that a lot of older adults did not really know that these services existed and how they could access these critical transportation services. So that is part of our plan over the next 4 years. And then the other area we're going to focus on just really briefly today is retiring in place or aging in place. And this is really a core function of our Aging and Disabilities Resource Connection, which is, as you can see, the resource line is on the bottom of the slide, but this is really to help older adults maximize their strengths and resources to really live independently in the community of their choosing. So we provide person-centered, individualized programming to meet basic needs of individuals. We, again, want to provide through this line easy access to supports and resources, not just our community-based services and services that we provide in the county, but even critical resources like food, Medicaid offices, whatever services they might need to support them living as independently as possible. And then we have a lot of community partnerships in the community, and we couldn't do this work without those community partners to continue to provide food resources, affordable home maintenance, SNAP, our community centers, again, as mentioned, and then, of course, the services that we provide in our area plan. And I think a key part of this plan, again, is to provide a lot of outreach, again, so that members of our community know about these critical resources, know how to access them, and their family members as well can help put together a plan for them to, again, remain independent and have the services and support they need. So there are 17 area agencies on aging in Oregon, and all of them are working to complete these area plans, which will begin the implementation July 1st of this year. Those plans feed into the Oregon State Plan and ultimately into the National Plan on Aging. So our plan, again, outlines the goals and objectives with our implementation timelines, and we will be doing yearly progress reports to the state of Oregon and of course, to our Aging Services Advisory Council. And really we'll be looking at how we're doing on the plan, if we need to make any modifications as we go along. So with that, I have a team of experts here in the audience, so if you have any questions about the plan or about any of the information provided today, I'd love to hear from you.
Great. Commissioner West?
Thank you, this is great. It looks like, what is the cost? $70,000 budgeted in the general funds used as a match. Am I understanding it correctly that, I think this is great, and I really like that, before I get there, you guys did a lot of great groundwork. The survey was like 1,200 is a really good number. You got a good sample. You're being very diverse in your approach to try to get a pulse of what the community needs. Great job.
I'll remember.
And this is, a segment of the Clackamas County population that needs to be taken care of. We have housing issues here that are quite with housing instability with seniors. We have a lot of different things happening. It's the largest growing population in the county. So this is important. I didn't want to get an understanding just like with the budget though, because, we're talking about general fund dollars, and every dollar from general fund we treat as quite precious. So is it $70,000 for 4 years, or every single year it's $70,000, and then we get a match from the state through Medicaid? Is it like what is the Medicaid program? Is it like a population pot of funds that goes towards, how does that work with Medicaid through the state? And then are they matching $70,000 for 4 years every single year? Can you explain that to me?
That's a great question. Since I'm fairly new in my role, I might ask one of our content experts to come up and maybe just explain that to you a little bit in more detail. I want to make sure we get it right.
Mary, do you know?
Okay, so this is,
Okay.
I think, I'm going to jump in. It's one-time county general funds. It's not every year. I mean, the board gives $10 million of general funds to Health, Housing, Human Services across all of the services they provide.
Okay.
This is one way the board is supporting older Americans in Clackamas County. So I think the money is worth it, the
Yeah.
general fund match. But the majority of the funds are from, as listed, the state of Oregon, Medicaid.
So, but through Medicaid, right? Like that's some federal dollars. I am curious about how that happens. If we don't, you can talk to me offline too if we don't know.
Yeah, I would say we could certainly follow up with
Okay.
a nice little
To
summary.
the staff standing,
If you know, feel free to come share with me. And Gary, is it just 70,000 one time for 4 years? That doesn't seem like a lot.
I believe that's the case. We'll double confirm that, but yes,
Okay.
it's the one time for every 4 years.
And is this program seems to be, are we just like that great at stretching the dollar here with this program, or are there other funding sources for this program to help it be viable, like with the transportation needs? Are we braiding funds here as we talk about all the time?
yes, definitely. We are braiding, blending, really, yes, there are a lot of other
Baking,
funds.
baking,
Yes. Yeah, all of that. Yeah, there's a lot of other funds that go into supporting our services for older adults. And I believe that the funds that we're talking about here are from the Older American Act.
Okay.
And not necessarily from Medicaid.
Okay, and are those are state funds?
Those are
or
federal funds
funds.
that come through the
So are we
state.
concerned about the funds federally right now with this?
We should be concerned about all federal funds, Commissioner.
Thank you.
We
I
have
mean,
not received any specific,
this?
communication to
Yeah.
this funding, but we should be concerned about all
Do you
federal
see anything
funds.
looming right now that has your spidey sense going off specific to anything yet? I know we're on pins and needles a little bit
Yeah.
at local governments. Okay.
I would hate to try to look into the crystal ball at this point.
Well, your crystal ball is clearer than mine, probably. Thank you. I just wanted to know kind of on what might be out there. But yeah, if you want to explain that to me offline, that's totally fine. But this is great. Thank you. I support it.
Do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for this. As being a senior myself, I'm learning more and more that, yeah, it's always nice to have that backup. And what I particularly like is the resource line information. So this is for folks who, is it only for low-income folks, or is it just for folks who who are aging in place and then want to have a little extra help? I think I'm gonna save this number.
Yeah, it's
Right now.
it's for really anyone. A family member can call who's concerned and looking for resources. It's for, also for any individuals with disabilities who might need additional
Yeah,
resources. And then for folks that are, older adults that are aging, and just, I think, trying to find those resources, until you need them and until you maybe get to that point in your life, you may not even know what's available. And so this is really, again, individualized resources. Each person's needs are different depending upon where they live, who they live with, what their goals are, all of that. So it's really for everybody or anybody, yeah.
Great. What I like about it is it gives you an opportunity to age in place, if possible, and still be a vital member of the community with a little extra help. And I know I need it because I lost my badge again, Gary, but I promise I'll find it. It will turn up. The first one turned up. I went on a cleaning spree, and I regularly have to use my computer to find my phone too. So I'm already saying it. I'm not over the hill yet, but I seem to be getting there, and I'm really grateful, not just for myself personally, but there are a lot of vital seniors out there with just a little bit of help can really, maintain a lifestyle and have people help them with the just they need. But I will, so far, depending on my sons, a little more regularly, and if they don't show up, their sisters call them to make them come. So I'm lucky that way. Anyway, thank you so much for this presentation. Okay.
Commissioner West?
You have a really interesting demographic number here. It says 79,500 residents age 65 or older live in Clackamas County, called Clackamas County Home. And the population segment, as I mentioned earlier, is the fastest growing age cohort in the county. Out of that number that we know we're dealing with, that population segment, who qualifies within that segment of our county? A lot of our county is wealthy. Not all of it is by any means. We definitely have many who are not in this county. So I'm curious, what is the population within this segment we're actually serving that qualify for these services or would utilize them? What is that number? And then, Mike, and then Mary, a more broader question to you is are we doing a good job delivering services to that specific piece of the population that falls within the range of where they would receive these services? And do you have the resources you need right now to take care of that growing population?
Do you want to answer the first
Yeah, I mean, I
question?
can just say, the services, most of them, folks are eligible if they meet the age requirement.
It's just an age requirement. It's not an income. It's not, okay.
There are other, services within a service, so there are certain Medicaid-funded services where there would be an income requirement, but, there are some service, but most of the services in our area plan are focused on, again, older adults
Okay.
that need those services and need access to it. Like our transportation services, most of them, there is no cost to the participant. Of course, they're not free because, right,
Yeah.
we're funding these services and resources, and volunteers are providing those rides as well. We have a really vibrant volunteer population that is also.
And that's allowed under Medicaid, because often Medicaid is quite income restrictive. Okay, for this it is. Okay, cool, thank you.
Great. In fact, I wanted to echo what Ben had just talked about, just the 79,000 residents of 65 years of age and older. And I think that when they did that point-in-time count, some of the frontline workers, I asked, what do they see as the fastest growing population? And they said seniors. So what is also, I think, really beneficial to this board is that, number one, that this is kind of a regional collaboration kind of planning effort for future aging and long-term care needs. And second of all, it's a community needs assessment that really, I think, will help us in our strategic planning to set some priorities for looking at what we can do to step up for seniors. I know we're looking at some land and opportunities. So I think it's just a fabulous report. I want to thank you, just to echo what Martha said, appreciate all the hard work on this, all the community outreach in it. That is really impressive. And also, I want all the viewers to make sure they understand this number, because I've gotten that question a number of times. Who do I call? How do I reach out to somebody? And I think it was at one of the other meetings, I asked you, what's the number? And I've continued to pass it out. But again, that's 503-650-5622. And it's a senior resource line. And I just encourage for folks to write that down and have it, because somebody will ask at some point in time. And the only closing thing I wanted to kind of say is, how can people volunteer? Because one of the things you had mentioned is just needing their yard cleaned up, and I see that, and a lot of times people really want to help. So if they want to get involved in that, what should they do?
Yeah, I think they can call the same line, the Aging and Disabilities Resource Connection line, and someone there can get them connected to become involved as a volunteer.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Gary, we better sign up.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm signing up.
Thank you very much. Gary, what's up next?
So while you don't need a formal motion, may this come to your April 10th business meeting for formal adoption?
Okay.
Any concerns, commissioners? Is that okay? You don't need a motion, but I'm looking at a head nod. Commissioner Schrader, is that okay?
Yep.
All right, so, good to go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, moving forward, the next policy session is proposed fee changes for the Building Codes Program. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development, and Cheryl Bell, Assistant Director for Transportation and Development, will present. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Chair Roberts,
Good morning.
Commission. We are here, well, back up. We were here in February, and we had a discussion with the board at that point in time about a variety of fee adjustments within the department. At that particular time, we did note the fact that not included in that package were permits related to our building fee or our buildings program. Essentially, there are statutory requirements related to increasing those fees, and those are basically highlighted on page 2 of your report. There are 3 specific requirements. One, adopting permit fees and inspection fees are required to be done by ordinance. Secondly, we have to provide notification to the state Building Codes Division. We are a entity of the state as it relates to our building program, essentially implementing their standards. And then last but not least, provide an opportunity for public comment on any fee modification during a public hearing. So essentially, we're here today asking your authorization to move forward to schedule a public hearing for the fees that are being considered. I want to just briefly highlight those fees for you. Although there are a number, we try to be as clear and transparent as we can with the public. There are a number of pages in the appendix that show fees. They kind of fall into basically 4 different categories. One of which is, and this most significant, is we're looking to increase the minimum hourly rate from $85 to $120. Essentially, the last time this permit fee was looked at was in 2010. And basically, this is an adjustment to our minimum hourly fee, and is proposed to offset inflationary impacts since that, 15 years since the last time that fee was assessed. Secondly, we're looking to apply the policy adopted by the board regarding the annual CPI adjustments, but we're looking for your authorization to round some of those down, as we did with the last package. Essentially, we, just for cash handling purposes and ease with the community, we feel like we should adjust the number of these fees by a very minimal amount to make it easier for them and us. Number 3, we're looking to adopt a minor label inspection fee. We can provide more detail about that, but it's essentially a $75 fee that's mandated by the state minor label program. We just don't have that fee adopted, so we're not able to secure funding for that particular inspection at this point in time. And last but not least, there are a number of minor housekeeping changes. Those are mostly around terms, fee terms. They have no financial impact or no financial adjustments, just basically for simplicity and reading through the fee schedule. With that, there are a variety of options that staff has presented you. We have made a recommendation looking for authorization to approve the proposed modifications to the building codes fee program and direct staff to schedule a public hearing to be held at a regular scheduled business meeting. But we will be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dan. Commissioner West?
I don't know if this is under purview with these fees, Gary. We had talked about issues around septic and inspections. Do you remember? Is
Yes,
this?
they are DTD fees, but I don't think they're building codes.
Yeah, those fees are not a part of this particular package, correct?
Okay. But you know what I'm talking about, and like our response time because of was slow, and we were trying to work on that so we could be.
The board authorized an adjustment to those fees with the last package.
That was the last package.
Correct,
Okay.
which is, we're looking to, which will provide additional funding and additional ability for us to staff up and respond more timely.
Terrific. And then, okay, that clarifies. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Any other comments, commissioners? Seeing none? I'll entertain a motion then.
I move that we approve the proposed modifications to the building codes program fees and direct staff to schedule a public hearing to be held at a regular business meeting.
Second.
All right, Commissioner West has moved to approve the proposed modification of the building code program fees, direct staff to schedule a public meeting, public hearing. It's been seconded by Commissioner Schrader. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, would you please call the poll? I'm sorry, discussion?
Like,
Oh, I'm sorry, sorry.
really quick, how does this fee structure, I know there's some comparison in the packet to Portland, but regionally or regions like ours, where do you think we compare? And then have we had any feedback from our building community and developers and people that would be hit with these fees? Are we having any sense that I know they never like this, but I'm trying to find that common ground that is appropriate for us to do the good work and functioning as a good local government, while also like still understanding the impact to the community. Could you speak to that just a little bit before we finally vote on this?
Yeah, Commissioner, I'd be happy to talk about that. We did a comparison of jurisdictions across the metro area because that's kind of our comparable market. By going to the requested 120, we're right in the middle of that market. The low range is around 117. The upper range is about 195. So hitting that 120 is kind of low end of the comparables. That's why we feel that it's a fair increase to cover our inflationary costs. We have been in contact with HBA and talking with HBA. Had a good conversation, and I understand that they are watching today, and they will be providing public comment at the hearing.
Okay.
And one of the things that we continue to hear from the marketplace, and you've seen it a part of this packet, and you've seen it a part of the last packet, was this almost a reset of the fees.
Yeah.
And I think through the good guidance of the board's adoption of that CPI policy, microscopic shifts are more tolerable
Yeah.
than seismic shifts that we see with a delay in dealing with the fees. And so to the extent that we can continue to kind of inch these up on a very microscopic basis, the market is more amenable to some of those adjustments. It's when you say wholesale doubling or tripling of fees, I know some of our jurisdictional partners have done sizable fee increases based off budgetary issues they're facing, and we haven't taken that approach. It's been more of a job costing effort to go out and see how much our processes cost, and then also it used to be in the packet, in all honesty, we had jurisdictional comparisons for all those different fees, but they just weren't in this particular packet, but we are right within the jurisdictional market.
And then I have one quick question. It says like, let's say commercial, industrial, structural code fees. I actually have no idea what that means because I am not in this business. For full disclosure, but it says like $120, like a base maybe, and $290 as a base. I mean, there's a couple different ways that it's structured this way, and then once you go over a certain dollar figure, and then it says plus, $740 per 1,000 over 2,000. So once it's calculated to go over $2,000 in cost, it jumps from 120 to we're doing a per $1,000 charge over 2,000. Is that like, am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
And it doesn't look like maybe just the base fee from like 85 to 120 jumped and the rest of it stayed the same? Or is that what we're commonly just seeing, the shift in the base, but not a giant shift in the dollar amount per 1,000?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
It's
And
that, trying to cover that lower end of the cost.
okay. Perfect. I mean, it seems, I would like to see eventually, like, sometimes government costs go down for our taxpayers. It just seems like never happen, unfortunately. But this seems reasonable in covering your guys' costs, and you're trying to find that, you're trying to find that sweet spot to
That's
be.
exactly
yeah,
it.
I
And the hope
appreciate
is
that.
hope is that we have these microscopic adjustments going forward.
There's no desire to gouge anybody here.
Correct.
I'd love to hear what the HBA has to say moving forward in a public hearing, so I'll vote to advance it forward. I'm curious to like how they feel like it impacts the marketplace and industry, but I appreciate your cautiousness and your, and like you said, let's make it incremental and tolerable. So thank you.
Right. Any further discussion? So, clerk, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Gary, what's next?
Next policy session is Walk, Bike, Clackamas Plan Presentation, presented by Transportation and Development, Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development, and Karen Burig, Long Range Planning Manager. This is an informational update only. Go ahead, please.
I want you all to hearken back to 1996.
Oh, good
What were
God.
you doing back then?
Junior high school.
Well, thank you so much. But that essentially is setting the stage for the fact that that was the last time that we did a very comprehensive look at our walk-bike plan throughout Clackamas County. And it's been a number of years since then, and we are here to present a very comprehensive project that's taken place over the last couple of years to really do a deeper dive into that particular plan. And to share that information with you today, I have Karen Burig, our long-range planning manager, to share some of the highlights and details of the plan before you, and we'd be glad to happy to answer any questions you might have going forward. This session is informational only at this point in time.
Wonderful. Good morning, Commissioners, Chair. It's very nice to see you this morning. And let's see, will I see the presentation up on my screen? Okay, perfect. Well, I'll just kick it off. This is really a plan that's been a long time coming. And we've been working very hard over the last few years to be able to move this plan forward and develop this plan. The state rules, specifically the transportation planning rule, requires that we have pedestrian and bicycle elements as a part of our transportation system plan. And so ultimately the action that will happen during a public hearing is an amendment to our comprehensive plan. And so that's what we're working towards here. This particular work that we've done to create this walk-bike plan was funded through a transportation and growth management grant. And so we received outside funding to undertake this work. And ultimately, the project goal is to provide a long-term vision to improve walking and biking opportunities throughout the county. It is focused specifically on unincorporated areas of the county. So next slide. So I'll cover a variety of things as a part of this presentation, and I won't go through each of these right now, but you can go to the next slide. So this particular project, and as I said, it's setting the vision for walking and biking in the county. I think we've addressed each of those. So a couple of things that I want to talk about. It does talk about a future system of needs that are both capital projects as well as supportive programs. We really were talking and thinking about new things that had happened since 1996. And there's quite a few of those. And then it was really built on community engagement. So next slide. All right, so foundationally, we worked with an advisory committee, the WBAC, sometimes we refer to it as the WBAC, but it was 18 members total, different community members from throughout Clackamas County with different areas of expertise. And there were 4 meetings, and for those community members where it was helpful, we were able to provide a stipend to the community members to be able to participate as a WBAC member. So next slide. we did a variety of engagement across time that really was tied to different milestones, and it was tied to the different meetings. So you can kind of see the whole suite of different technical memos, that's what TM stands for, but technical memos that were reviewed and were both foundational, but then also helped us establish priorities that were a part of the end product of this. So next slide. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what was done to develop the plan. There was significant, in addition to the WEBAC, the advisory committee, we did many different activities to engage with people during various steps of the process. So there was the advisory committee, we worked with the Clackamas County newsletter, we did in-person events. We really appreciate being able to go to the county fair, to be able to get views from all types of folks. There were information sheets, we had interested party lists, we went to different events, so there were many different ways that people were able to be involved. There were 4 specific milestones, and that had to do with the first, we really wanted to know what was most important to people. Second, we wanted to know what improvements they thought were needed. We asked then if we missed anything and got feedback about priorities, and then we shared the draft plan. That really is the steps of the process. So next slide. Oh, there was the next slide. We used actually, I also want to talk about the fact that we used different tools to collect information. So I had mentioned we went to the county fair. We also did what was called community conversations. Those are really small meetings. We go to where people are already meeting. Potentially we would have gone to like the Billquist Holiday Bazaar or the Trolley Trail Fest, different places where people were already gathering to be able to get input. We had an interactive map and survey. We had an open house, and then we also had a virtual open house to get people's feedback. And so that gives you an idea of the participation throughout the project. Next slide. So what did we hear? And it's really encompassing, and again, I won't read everything, but people out there really do, one, if there aren't safe places to walk and bike, people do avoid doing those things. But people are interested in being able to get out and access places through walking and biking. There's a lot of safety concerns. People are very interested in multi-use trails. They're also interested in separated facilities because it creates a better feeling of safety. There are also a lot of interest in different types of programs. And we worked together with other jurisdictions, both ODOT and the cities, to really make sure that we're working on a network of facilities, that it's not just facilities in our jurisdiction, but that those facilities connect to other jurisdictions. So next slide. Coming out of all of this is really a focus on 6 goals that guided kind of the decision-making and the development of the priorities. The goals were safety, accessibility, connectivity, sustainability, equity, and health. So each of those goals were considered as we move forward as a part of the project, but this was foundational. So next slide. One of the things that I think is really important in the work that we do is being able to allow people to connect to the places that they live and that they're familiar with. And so a way that we did this is we really broke the county into 5 different areas so that when people were responding about projects that were important to them, they could focus on their area. And so we had 5 different areas because there are different needs there are different needs up in Welch's than there are in the McLaughlin neighborhoods. So this allowed them, and so we structured both the resulting walk-bike plan so that the projects can be talked about in those areas, but we also structured our outreach that way as well. So next slide. All right. Priority projects. People are all very interested in projects, right? Because capital projects make a difference in our communities. But we went through many different steps. So first, we didn't start from ground zero. We looked at our existing plans. We looked at our existing transportation system plan. We've been doing a lot of area work around schools specifically. We took projects from our Safe Routes to Schools plans. We have a separate active transportation plan that is specifically about connecting our communities. We looked at that. And then we also reviewed what we call our essential pedestrian network. We took the comments that we received, and then we analyzed and we brought in new analysis. So we tried to find out if there were spaces that we were missing. So we looked at bicycle level traffic stress. We looked at pedestrian crossings. We mapped all of these destinations, and we also looked at some crash analysis. So that really helped us identify those priority projects. Next slide. So the next step, after we had where we understood our needs to be, we looked at ways to make sure that our priorities reflected the goals. And so again, there's a lot of information here, but we looked at different criteria that would help us understand how we're achieving and what type of projects would help us move forward to our goals. So that's what this particular slide talks about and has the details of that influence the prioritization. So next slide. And so with that, what the plan includes is a series of priorities. There's a total of 236 projects, and this is kind of the distribution of those projects across the 5 different focus areas or sub-areas of Clackamas County and the different projects within those different sub-areas. So again, the walk bike plan has the details about all of those projects. They're both linear projects, those being like a sidewalk or a bike lane or a point project, such as a crossing project. Next slide. And this here is an example. That's not the whole map, not all of the projects, but just an example so that you can see what is inside the Walk Bike Clackamas plan. So within each area, we took the projects and used that prioritization criteria, and then was talked about, got input from the community, as well as the advisory committee, and was allowed us to group into the high, medium, and low priority projects. So the green are examples of the highest priority, the orange are the medium priority, and then the red are the lowest priority. And each of this was done within each of those sub-areas, so we didn't have all of the high priority priority projects within one part of the county. So they were distributed throughout the county. And then, so each of the areas have maps like this that show the location of each of the projects. And then there's also a list that describes all of the projects. Next slide. So why don't we go back to the other slide? Before I go on to the next slide, I do want to talk about funding. And funding is something, and we've been going out and talking to different folks, and we talked to the Planning Commission, and there was this question, and some of the feedback we've been getting is, how does all of this get funded? And so for this particular plan, it's about identifying priorities. We did not cost estimate, and we did not assign specific funding to any of these projects. The way that these projects get funded, they will end up being integrated into our overall transportation system plan. And at that point in time, we'll do cost estimates, and they'll be part of the overall prioritization process that creates our 20-year capital improvement plans. But ultimately, what we need to do is match specific funding to a project for it to get funded. So for example, currently we are doing a project along Courtney Avenue to put in sidewalks and complete bike lanes. And that project is receiving outside funding, regional flexible funds, but it moved forward and we knew it was a high priority project because of its listing in our past transportation system plan. So that's kind of how these projects get funded, but we're often asked questions about funding in relationship to this. So I wanted to bring that up at that point. So next slide. The next thing, so in addition to projects, another element is this concept of shared streets. That is this idea that there are certain streets out there that are reasonable for people to use for walking and biking, even if they don't have sidewalks or bike lanes. And those are our low-volume streets. Those are our streets that may have lower speeds, but they may need some investment, such as a pavement marking or some signage. So there was the identification of what streets out there could actually be what would be called shared streets that could help us connect to those places where there are bike lanes or there are sidewalks. Next slide. And then finally, I want to talk about supportive programs. Actually, this relates to the shared streets. And this really is this idea, or this very well-known fact, it's more than an idea, that the slower the speed, the safer the space, especially for pedestrians and cyclists. But as the speed of a street increases, the likelihood and the chance of fatality or serious injury, it just goes up dramatically. And that's that idea is as we're thinking about those spaces where there are lower speeds, they may be appropriate for those shared streets. So next slide. There was a whole process for identifying what those shared streets are. You can go on to the next slide. And then these are the type of treatments that would be applied to those shared streets. So this whole process, again, it was talked about with the advisory committee, and there is a whole section in the walk-bike plan about shared streets. So next slide. I think finally, the piece of the walk-bike plan had to do with supportive programs. So these are separate from our capital investments, separate from the shared streets, but this idea that we have supportive programs out there that are also important to enhance people's ability to walk and bike in their neighborhoods. And so currently we have some of these already, such as our Safe Routes to Schools program, where we partner with other organizations to be able to talk with schools about promoting both walking and biking to that school, but identifying specific plans and identifying areas and investments that are needed around those schools. But there are other types of program work, such as school zone safety, or if we're doing a program on slow down slides, all of those things kind of work together to provide better places and a better walking and biking environment. So overall, next slide. That's what's included in our walk-bike plan, and we're very excited to have that put together. But the next steps are about the adoption process. So for this particular plan, this will become a part of our comprehensive plan. It will become both adopted into, as an appendix into our comprehensive plan, but that we will be bringing forward policy language changes to our transportation system plan chapter. And so the next step really is for there to be a public hearing both at the Planning Commission, which is scheduled in April, and then a public hearing before you, which is scheduled in May. So next step. And then with that, I think I will just go ahead and wrap up and ask you if I have any questions.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Schrader.
So what exactly is a micro-mobility program?
Micro-mobility program. So I think that's something that's new since 1996,
Yeah.
right? But it
Everything else
really
looks
is
familiar.
that idea that there's more ways that we use to get around, right? And be it scooters, or be it
got it. Okay.
e-bikes, places for people to be able to charge their e-bikes or rent e-bikes. It may even be things like being able to have access to kind of Uber and Lyft. So it's these different types of mobility options.
Great.
Okay, thank you. I was curious about that. Sure. Right.
Commissioner West.
Thank you. There's one issue with mobility in our county that I hear about all the time, and it's the lack of sidewalks in Oak Grove and Jennings Lawns, right? It's a largely populated area within our county, family neighborhoods. Parents are concerned that it's hard for them to walk to any park or school safely. If I was to prioritize like what we're looking at, some of these things feel a little bit like at this point nice to have, but there has been a chronic underinvestment in basic infrastructure within these neighborhoods for ever, since like forever. And we know we will have very limited funds because we're not even talking about funding yet. But there are a lot of like families or even people with the aging population that we talked about. They just want to safely be able to walk down the street, and there are no sidewalks. And so it looks like when we talk about linear project points, listed projects by planning area and priority, in your slide, it says total project, sidewalk mileage, bike mileage, total trail mileage. Is this what we have now? Can you explain that graph to me a little bit?
Yeah, I can explain the
Is this
graph.
how we're prioritizing different things? Yeah.
So thank you for pulling that up. I appreciate that. So yes, how this graph is showing is giving you information about the projects. So it's not about what's existing there. It's about the projects. So, for example, in the McLaughlin kind of sub-area, there were 40 projects.
Okay.
Of those 40 projects, there are 34 miles of sidewalk and 29 miles of a bikeway.
Do we have to be totally multimodal, or can we see a huge underinvestment and advocate for, I don't know, sidewalks, which are expensive, but might be the most bang for your buck, most usage for people to just do the bare minimum, prioritizing because it's safety issues, it's the walkability. Like, they don't have sidewalks, and it's like there's a lot of road traffic. It's relatively urban in its population. It's close to the city of Portland. We have a lot of bike infrastructure. I don't know if we have to like look at everything and give a little bit to everybody, or if we can focus funding on where maybe the greatest need is, or maybe am I wrong in how I'm looking at this? I'm totally open to that also, but.
I think what the plan looked to do, because we were integrating both our pedestrian plan and our bicycle plan together, but we were looking at kind of both of those needs. And ultimately, I think as I was kind of noting a bit when I was talking about funding, I mean, for a project to get constructed, it does need to be matched to funding, and that's really where we're going to see things happen.
Okay.
And projects will happen in different ways too, but I think.
We connect projects to opportunities. And so a couple things. Let's go back to your first statement. We finally got funding for Jennings to do significant pedestrian improvements up and down that corridor, and that project is moving forward.
Nice.
But there isn't, as Karen was sharing with you, we go through that process as a part of our TSP and look to tier projects based off our understanding of funding options that are out there and the ability to secure those funds. Historically, our TSP was basically just a list of like 20 years of projects, and it's like, this is ridiculous. There's no organization around this. So basically, we've implemented a process to tier those, tier 1, 2, and 3. And those tiered projects then roll into our 5-year CIP. And what we do is we look at that 5-year CIP or even the 20-year or the tier projects in our 20-year TSP, and we look to see what funding we have where. That funding differs. So, for example, if you look at like, let's say Jennings in that area, there aren't a lot of internal county-controlled funding options that are out there. So we have to really secure and look for funding through the state, and metro, regional partners, whoever it may be, to try to get dollars for that. That discussion changes. So, for example, if you go over into the North Clackamas revitalization area where we have urban renewal as a tool, we're able to look at other tools that are there. So it's not an even distribution of tools throughout the county, which is unfortunate. But we match those projects to whatever funding sources are available. And we're getting better at this. I'm not sure if you ever get a chance. I mean, we've done 2 kind of major projects. I call them, there's one thing to build roads in Greenfield where it's all just,
Right.
area, and you can go out there and bulldoze and build the road, and it's not a big deal. It's more difficult to rebuild them in a built environment. And so you think about a lot of those areas that have been developed. We redid Bell Avenue, for example, and it was a challenging project because it was one of the first that we did in that built environment around the North Clackamas revitalization area. Now, if you go and look at Linwood, which is just down the road from it, you can see how we've grown in understanding about how to build those projects. And so we're doing things like, instead of road, bike path, curb, sidewalk, we're doing road, curb, separating that stuff. So Linwood has more paths and things like that.
Okay.
And then, and a lot of those projects, in all honesty, aren't the full meal deal in some areas. So, for example, we have a traffic safety plan that we look to target very specific. Karen was talking about linear improvements versus point-specific improvements. A lot of the work that we're doing to that traffic safety plan are those point-specific improvements. It's like, you know what, we need to put a crosswalk right here. What are the funding options that we have to do that based off history, fatal crash history, and things of that nature? So, again, it's opportunity-based, and we do the best that we can. We're trying to match it with the funding sources that we have.
So just to quickly distill down what you said, we have all these different priorities for this plan, from bikes, sidewalks, trails, the whole thing. And you, from some funding source, may really like to do sidewalks, but right now you have funding for trails. And so you're now prioritizing the trail because that's just happened to be where we can get the funding necessary to do that project. We'd love to do this over here, but we're not necessarily going to be able to triage and prioritize. We have to do that based on funding, not based on needs or likes.
In the majority of Clackamas County, that's the correct. Yep.
Okay, and then, is that, when we saw McLaughlin and Oakfield and those kind of busier roads in that area, you know, it does get a fair amount of pedestrian traffic, and it doesn't, well, I know Oakfield does not have sidewalks. Does that really start to look at, like, is that why that's green there? Like, yeah, that's a big safety issue. It's relatively busy traffic. There's not a safe way to traverse it. Is that kind of like why that, or do we have funding source for that? Is that why they're in green?
So they're in green because of what you said at first.
Okay.
It matches our priorities, matches the goals, matches the interest. But it's not green because we know it will be funded first.
Okay, thank you.
But we know it's a high priority, which allows us, as the different funding sources become available, to be able to point to a plan and say, this is a high priority for our community. So I think it's kind of an essential step, especially as we think about those really high dollar grant funding requests that we might seek.
I think we would truly love to build sidewalks and bike lanes along Oakfield Road. You've driven that road.
Yeah.
I never like to give you cost estimates on a wild guess in the middle of a policy session. I can't even begin to understand how much that cost is.
Okay.
And that's not the intent. I mean, we're out there looking, securing, trying to gain funding sources on what they're at. But it's a very challenging project with the topography that you have there, with the hillsides that are coming down, the right-of-way acquisitions that would be there. It's a big project, so.
And one last question. Are our bridges at all considered in this? You know, we have a number of bridges we have issues with within the county. Are we looking to make them fit within this plan too? Like, we have the Bull Run, we have other bridges.
Right. So I would say, I have a few answers, is that there are some specific pedestrian and bicycle bridges that are indicated in the plan. And then with regards to the other bridges, it is more about, I would say, sort of the linear access. So if there is a road that then goes across a bridge and we have identified that that road is a priority, then it follows onto the bridge, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah, the only thing, I met with Dan about this, and I was excited to hear that this was coming forward to us, that I had mentioned my father back in '96 was on a committee that looked at safe bike routes. And I can just tell you, one individual I was so impressed with, he lived in Vancouver, and he would ride his bike all the way from Vancouver to the sheriff's office every day.
Wow.
So a lot of people that we might not realize, and he was in good shape.
Clearly.
But I think a big issue too, you know, of just marking a lot of times. And there's a lot of different bike groups that actually look at the safest route. So I was very interested to kind of see how you're talking about speed and safe, you know, where the risk for fatality goes up. So I want to say it was very comprehensive and very exciting to see us kind of bringing that back and moving forward on. So this is just informational only right now. So I want to thank you both. And so we'll go ahead. If there's no other objections, we'll move forward, and thank you both.
Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much.
So I'll now recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the Water Environmental Services Board of Directors. And Gary, would you please introduce the final session for today for us?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is Water Environment Services System Development Charge Update. This is an informational update only, but there will be a request to change the methodology for you in a few weeks here. Presenting is Greg Geist, Director of Water Environment Services, and Aaron Blue, the Finance Manager of WES. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Chair Roberts, Commissioners. We are here today to talk about sewer and stormwater system development charges. Ultimately, we would like to get your approval of both an updated methodology. Previously, our methodology was from 2019, as well as the amount that we're going to charge for those SDCs. Today is informational only. We will be back on April 15th to call the question. And with that, I'll hand it over to Aaron.
right. So as Greg just introduced, we're here to present the SDC methodology to the board. We have a short presentation prepared, and our goal with this presentation is to provide you with the information that you need to give us direction on next steps. Over the next 10 minutes or so, I'll provide a brief overview on SDCs in general, and then we'll walk through the calculation in WES's SDC methodology update. So system development charges, or SDCs, are one-time fees assigned to new development or changes in existing development that increase the demand on the system. Essentially, they serve as a mechanism to ensure that growth helps pay for growth by contributing to the cost of the infrastructure that's needed to serve it. A state statute provides the foundation for, legal foundation for SDCs. It specifies which utilities can charge an SDC, how the resulting revenues can be used, and it also outlines and defines the main components of SDCs, the reimbursement fee and the improvement fee component. Statute also outlines the accounting and reporting requirements that are reimbursed through the compliance fee. WES's rules and regulations essentially mirror state statute, and then they also provide additional guidance on how SDCs are assigned to different types of development based on that development's impact to the system, as we'll see on an upcoming slide. Next slide, please. So while state statute forms the basis for the SDC methodology, it doesn't actually prescribe a specific calculation, and that's where the SDC methodology comes in. So each methodology is specific to the organization, and it outlines which components are included, the variables that are included in each of those components, and generally how we're calculating those SDC charges in terms of the cost basis and the capacity basis, which we'll go over in a little bit. And finally, statute does specify the establishment and modification of an SDC. A methodology update, which is the course that we're currently on, requires adoption at a public hearing after 90 days noticing, whereas an inflationary adjustment to the rate, which the board generally adopts as part of the budget process in conjunction with the budget in each June, just requires a resolution or an order. Next slide, please. So SDCs may consist of one or both of these components. The reimbursement fee recovers the costs to buy into existing infrastructure. If a system had no available capacity, the reimbursement fee would be zero because there would be no cost basis to buy into. The improvement fee, on the other hand, funds future investments that are needed to expand the system capacity. The calculation for both components is essentially the same. The formula just derives a unit charge or unit cost by dividing the capacity basis into the cost basis. For this update, the capacity assumptions are from the 2022 population forecast that FCS Group completed for WES's service area, and the cost bases are from the adopted capital improvement plan that the board just adopted in February and from WES's fixed asset records. Next slide, please. So the unit charge is one piece of the total cost of the SDC. The other piece is how those costs are assessed to different types of development based on that development's relative impact. The 2023 update to WES's rules and regulations that the board adopted analyzed the impact of different types of development and updated the EDU assignments for wastewater. Resulting EDU assignments for residential properties are now based on square footage. So you can see the little chart in the lower left of this slide assigns 0.6 or 60% of an EDU to an accessory dwelling unit, all the way up to 120% or 1.2 EDUs for larger homes that have a higher impact on the system. Commercial quantities were also assessed, and just as an example, those differ based on demand factors. Laundromats use 1 EDU per machine. General commercial properties are based on square footage. Next slide, please. As a financial management best practice, we periodically examine and update our SDC methodology. We've been on about a 5-year review schedule, generally in conjunction with our master planning efforts. Staff worked with Donovan Enterprises, our third-party financial consultant, on this update. Donovan has extensive experience and expertise with SDC methodologies, and he's helped us with our last 4 or 5 updates as well. The purpose of this update was not only to incorporate the updated project list and capital costs from the adopted CIP, it was also to reflect the updates in our planning assumptions for population forecasts, and just as a financial transparency measure to review the cost bases and document the results of the methodology for the public. Next slide, please. All right, this is the full project timeline, and there's a lot going on here. But if you just focus on the blue, that's where we are today. The green is what we've done so far. We started this process in December. We've been to the advisory committee twice, and we'll share a little bit more about what their recommendation was. Today is the first of 2 policy sessions, as Greg shared. We're on a process that has a 90-day timeline built in for public noticing. So once we get the board's direction after that second policy session, we'll take the appropriate next steps by noticing the updated methodology and the fees that the board would like to determine, and then proceed with the 60-day review period. We're actually planning, the 60-day review period just applies to making the methodology available for review. It would be available as soon as the board provides us direction, so we'll build in a 90-day review period as well. And then the eventual adoption would be in mid-July. Next slide, please. All right, now getting into the math. This shows the SDC fee component calculations for wastewater, the reimbursement fees on the top, the improvement fees on the bottom. There are different methods to calculate the reimbursement fee cost basis. WES uses one of the most prevalent methods, which is based on the equity in the system, or the current cost to the existing customers, which is calculated by taking utility plant and service, adjusted net book value, or NBV. That's the original cost of the assets, less accumulated depreciation for value realized in prior years. We then reduce that amount by donated assets because there's no cost basis to recover from donations, and we reduce it by principal on long-term debt because that long-term debt will be paid for through ratepayer charges from future users of the system. The cost basis is then divided by the total demand units over the planning period, 92,000 EDUs, to arrive at a reimbursement fee cost unit of $572. The improvement fee cost basis is a little more straightforward. It's just the SDC eligible capital projects in the adopted CIP reduced by the existing fund balance that we have on hand to help pay for those projects, then divided by the EDUs that we're going to be adding over the planning horizon. That gives us an improvement fee of $11,128. The maximum SDC that WES could charge under this methodology is $12,285. That includes a compliance fee, which is based on 5% of the total reimbursement and improvement fee costs. Next slide, please. The calculation for stormwater is identical, just using stormwater SDC eligible capital projects and stormwater assets. More than half of WES's stormwater infrastructure was donated, so that offsets the original cost of those assets. We have a little bit of principal outstanding on stormwater debt related to the Three Creeks project. That gives us a reimbursement fee per ESU of $207. The improvement fee based on the stormwater capital projects that are SDC eligible is $251. And then adding in that compliance fee, we have a maximum statutory SDC of $480 for the stormwater side. Next slide, please. So we met with the advisory committee in January and March. January was informational only. In March, there was robust discussion, and the advisory committee made 2 separate motions. The first motion is to adopt the SDC methodology, which is just the math. It's the calculation that we walk through demonstrating compliance with statutes and with WES's rules. The second recommendation, second motion, was to phase in the maximum calculated SDC fees. The advisory committee's recommendation would entail 6.2% annual increases in the wastewater SDC and 14.3% annual increases in the stormwater SDC. And the table on this page shows what those fees could look like. Next slide, please. So we often get the question, what impact would a change in the SDC fee have on the monthly rates? And the hypothetical impact is illustrated on this slide. SDCs don't have a huge impact on the monthly rates for 2 reasons, primarily because they make up a relatively minor portion of WES's total revenue. Last year, our total revenue was about $66 million. SDC fees accounted for $4.5 million, or about 7% of that. Last year was a low development year, but even in a typical year of development, they might only account for 10 to 12% of our total revenue. The second reason that SDCs don't have a huge impact is because you cannot use SDCs to buy down the revenues required from rates to fund operating and maintenance expenses. Under statute, they're restricted to use only on capital projects. So over a 5-year period, if we were to implement the advisory committee's recommendation to phase in the maximum wastewater SDC, there would be a $1 difference in the rates in 2030. That difference is relatively less. You can see those lines diverge. Conversely, if the rate were to be reduced to $7,000 from the current rate of $9,100, it would lead to a difference in the rate of $1.75 in 5 years. So that's more revenue that we would have to collect through rates if we were collecting less through SDCs. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to pass it back over to Greg.
All right, thank you, Aaron. So, yeah, we're asking for two things: adopt the methodology. As far as setting the actual SDC, the fee, the board has ultimate discretion on what they do. We put some options together, the one that the advisory committee recommended, kind of the status quo, which is stick with what we've got and continue to do an inflationary adjustment based on construction index over the next 5 years, or even lower it. Well, actually, yeah, you could lower it to, say, $7,000, which is approximately what Washington County charges, and then knowing that it will have an impact on the rates, but we will have lower initial SDCs for development. Or you could, if you look back at slide 8, the fees have different components. So say you could say we don't want West to charge the reimbursement fee of $572, and we want to, the world's your oyster on this. Any questions?
Commissioner West, go ahead.
Well, SDCs are necessary, but we don't like them. It's like that balance between good local government and building infrastructure that's necessary. Just for the public, SDCs go towards, well, this is sewer and stormwater, but also SDCs are collected for parks and transportation costs and mileage for road usage and impact on the overall public system that we all need to have our communities thrive and be healthy. You said something that caught my interest a little bit. I think traditionally we've been competitive with Washington County on SDCs, and a little bit lower than Portland with our sewer and stormwater. Is that a correct assumption?
We have been above Clean Water Services since at least 2019.
We've been a little higher since 2019?
Yes.
And I guess, what are your thoughts? Because we have a governor who has very ambitious goals for housing and development. There's a lot of reasons why those goals aren't being met. SDCs comes up in this conversation all the time. We do have some of the fastest growing cities, out of the top 10 fastest growing cities in the entire state. At least 6 of them are in our county, the fastest growing one being Happy Valley. Wilsonville's on that list. And even some of our rural communities are on that list as fastly growing. Canby's on that list, Molalla might be. But I want to know if we become less competitive to build out necessary housing, if we're not careful with how we increase these costs to the developers who bear those costs. How much is this considered within the marketplace of development when we have to prioritize, right? Like, what is our priority here when we look at these fee structures? I don't like the fact that we're necessarily the highest. I also don't I want to make sure that we're not being cost prohibitive to actual very much needed continued growth and development.
Right. So I can share with you what I think that would look like to the two scenarios, the continue with what we've got and the recommendation. So if we continue with what we've got, we have $9,100 current fee. That's going to escalate, we think, by about 3% per year as the construction cost index rises. That would be about $300 a year that the developer would see as a tack on to putting a house up, average house. If we adopt the committee recommended one, that would go to $600 per year. So the difference is essentially $300 per home per year on those two options.
Okay.
The other thing that and it's back on
What
slide.
about a small business? What about you're wanting to put up a bike shop and you're a small business, or a little restaurant cafe? That's a bigger cost, is it not?
Not necessarily a bike shop, but a cafe.
A cafe,
Right.
or
It would
I don't
be-
know, a bookstore. I mean, a small business in general.
Yeah.
Does pay quite a bit more.
They can.
They can.
Depending, again, a laundromat would see a difference of $300 per unit.
Okay.
So if they have 10 units, that's $3,000.
So we talked about increasing some of the fees and costs so that we could have better outcomes and service for sewer and septic inspection. I know you're part of that conversation. When we were talking to contractors, we were like, Chair, I don't know if you know this, and Martha and Commissioner Schrader, we were weeks and weeks behind, and it was really gumming up the ability to get permitting processes done for septic tanks and whatnot. And so Gary worked with the directors to try to mitigate that. We did increase those fees so we could have better staff and better responses, which was necessary. So I guess that makes the question for me is, what is the developer, what is the market, and as we provide service, what are they getting for this increased cost? What are they not getting if we don't increase it, but what are they actually getting in service and value if we do?
So we're really talking about a balance. So we have an approved 5-year capital improvement plan. We come to the board annually with a budget that would fully fund what we are projected to be building. So the board at any year can say, no, we don't want you to build that, or we don't want you to expend this amount of money. So really what we're talking about is assuming that we are going to build the stuff that we want to build in the next 5 years, we either have to pay for it with some combination of SDCs and rates. There's, for different projects that we're building would have a different SDC eligibility. Aaron mentioned that it's by statute whether you can use SDCs for, it's got to be a capacity increasing project. So it's just a matter of, do we not build the infrastructure that we're projecting to need? That's really the question. And if we say, no, that's unacceptable, then it's a matter of how we balance the costs between rates and SDCs.
My last question, has HBA weighed in on this?
Home Builders
Yeah, Home Builders
Association.
Association.
So, yes, we have 2 slots on our advisory committee for the development community. Unfortunately, Preston Korst, who was represented at HBA, recently moved to to PGE, wasn't in attendance. The other one voted for it. David Golaby, out in Happy Valley, where the biggest impact, he voted for that as well. I subsequently contacted Preston before he left HBA and explained to him what had happened. And he said they may send a letter saying, well, we'd like a little bit more time to phase this in, but they didn't seem very upset.
Okay. Thanks for the information. I'll consider it. Thank you.
Commissioner Schrader.
You actually asked my question, Ben, and that was at the home builders. And my understanding, the advisory group is a makeup of all the players with the home builders as key members of the advisory group. So just by the way that this, the advisory framework is set up, there's always someone there. I don't know if we have a realtor, do we? No, we don't. But the building community is very, very well represented. So we don't do anything. The advisory committee really doesn't do anything unless they're really one of the best advisory committees I've ever had an opportunity to watch function and listen to, because they really do make sure the business community is well informed of what the issues are. And and they realize it's a balance between keeping the rates down and also, again, having that appropriate essential infrastructure for public safety and health. So, anyway.
And we do have representatives from the business community as well as the development community.
That's true. Yep.
Great. So I have been looking into this, and it's first of all, Aaron, you're amazing. I want to just tell you, and you can tell just your research and your knowledge about the finances is really something else. I have to comment on that. So as I kind of understand, the current structure is $9,100 for, say, a 2,500 square foot single home, but the cost, if you have an ADU or smaller structure, there's kind of a tiered costing model, as I understand. And so the true cost is somewhere around $13,000, and I think that was some sort of estimate done back in 2019. Is that correct about? So, I recognize we're not kind of where we should be. I also have a big concern on the need for housing. and the impact that that has on the building industry. And on some of the numbers, just looking at, and you and I are from Wilsonville, and it looks, apparently the SDC is somewhere around 52,000 in Wilsonville, about 44,000 in Gladstone, and it's down to about 23,000 in Milwaukee. So we really are in need for housing dramatically, and I think it's really trying to take a cautious approach on this. I don't want to be the highest in the region. And I think, yeah, and I think that, and as I've kind of looked at this too, it looks like, and you kind of touched on it, maybe you can explain that just a little more. Just, there's, say a 75% cost model on builders and 25% cost on the ratepayers. Can you maybe talk about that as kind of that, how you do that happy balance, right?
Sure. We currently, we fund about 75% of our SDC eligible projects with rates rather than SDCs. That's why, we're collecting less in SDCs than the maximum, so that's how that works. 75% is a, pretty good number relative to, the industry. And I'll observe that, all those new customers, they're coming in and they're paying their rates. Those rates are going to the projects that aren't SDC funded. They're going to the projects that are rehab and rehabilitation and refurbishment, replacement on stuff that has been being used for 40 years in some cases. So there is kind of a balance, fairness there, to like the folks that are paying the SDCs are also paying, because they're going to have an impact on the system, are also adding to the customer base that, and the rates that we use to do the R&R work.
Go ahead, Commissioner West.
Maybe it's just me, I don't have a high tolerance for meetings where we keep talking about increasing fees on taxpayers. Like, we've done a lot of that today. So maybe I'm just getting cranky. I know that's my bias. This does continue to impact development and housing, and we're in a housing crisis. And I don't hear a crisis with us not being able to fund capital projects even with the current SDCs that we have. And I don't see something like that looming. And I do want people to feel like that we're the best county to develop in the metro area. I want them to feel like they want to do business with us. We have the best service, we're the most responsive, and we're reasonable in our costs, and we're partnering with them to deal with the housing crisis. It's as electeds, we have to find this stinking balance with the SDCs, and it's never comfortable. And I understand the advisory committee coming to the decision they came to. I just don't know if I have that comfort level that the advisory committee has at this point. I mean, if this is informational, but this became a vote for me today, I wouldn't be voting for it based on like my commitment to also trying to address a housing crisis that impacts homelessness and impacts, our elderly population that we just talked about. A large segment of them are now the most likely to become housing insecure, and ADUs and shared housing helps support that crisis, but it's really expensive just to have an ADU. That's a lot more money. And so maybe somebody doesn't make that investment because of that initial cost. So I don't know if the state needs to partner with us. I don't know if the governor has some type of an ability to have legislation in session to say, we talked around this, that SDC and policies around that statewide are really an issue. I'm just really concerned about it. Chair, like what you echoed, like I can't express that enough. It feels like that this is maybe going in the wrong direction to deal with the housing crisis and piling on top of policies that have contributed to that crisis. And that's a big deal to us that we have to focus on at a local level. I don't know, and I'm not saying that I don't know, it's a tough call, but that's kind of where I feel like today after your presentation. And you did do a fantastic job. I'm not trying to, and I appreciate you gave us good information, and it's tough. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, one question I'd like to ask, and I think that, Martha, I'll get right to it in a second
it's okay.
here.
Go ahead.
And that is, just say, for example, you kept it at the existing fee structure, and you had a modest monthly increase in the user fees. How long would that take to kind of make up that loss by not having the 12,000? Could you just talk about that for a second?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So in our long-range financial planning, we're assuming a 5% increase to the monthly rates annually. And keeping the SDCs at the status quo, so just doing inflationary adjustments, aligns with that 5% annual increase in the monthly rates. If we were to increase the funding that we get from SDCs, we could potentially reduce the rate increases a little bit. So the phase-in approach led to a difference of about $4.4 million over 5 years, but it's a really minor impact in the monthly rate, as you saw. So if we wouldn't collect more than we need to through either rates or SDCs. Like we want to collect only enough to fund capital and operating and maintenance and debt service, like not-for-profit utility. So we're just trying to operate efficiently. So we wouldn't need to increase the monthly rates, I guess, in short. We would just potentially reduce them if we were getting more money from SDCs.
SDCs, okay. So kind of the two different ways. Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, and I just want to say, I think the real issue is inflation, is it not? It's becoming more and more expensive for materials. It's becoming more and more expensive to actually do the building. With the uncertainty that's going on with the federal government right now, we may be on our own a little more in terms of inflation increasing and heading towards a recession. I do think that's something to consider. I did listen to OPP today, and they're saying every day the chance of a significant recession is possible. So to Ben's point, that will also put a damper on any increased housing and infrastructure building if we move into a deep recession at this point. So I guess my point is, sometimes you have to raise fees because at least you have to keep up for the infrastructure. And I am not clear. I wish the state was helping us more with this, particularly if it's affordable housing, meeting a set of criteria where there could be some housing dollars put towards the reduction, from the state. In other words, they're helping us supplement what the necessary infrastructure is. I don't know what the policy, I don't really know what the policy answer to this is yet, but one of the key things we've always done is tried to keep down rates. And if we didn't raise SDCs, the probability of raising rates, I imagine, would become more, yeah. So that's the balance that we're trying to hit here. And again, nobody likes to raise fees. But maybe we should change what the balance is. Maybe that's the conversation we should have. I don't know. That's for another discussion.
All right, thank you. Commissioner West, do you have another?
I opined a little bit on that, I had two questions in it. If we don't increase the SDCs now, will the SDC fees increase enough over time to support the system? And my other question is, do we need to take this jump right now? Is it critical that we do this now? Is there something that we need to be aware of where we're going to, doesn't sound like it, but I want to make sure that we know the answers to those two questions.
So it's best practice to have SDC, an approved SDC methodology. So we would very much like to accomplish that. But as Aaron explained, the actual amount that we charge for an SDC versus our rates, and maybe next time when we come back, we can show you where we're at relative to our peers, both with the SDCs as well as the rates, because that's the balance that we're talking about. So yeah, but ultimately it's a zero-sum game. If we're going to build the infrastructure we need, it's got to come from rates or it's got to come from SDCs, a combination of both.
Something about it doesn't, with the housing crisis, like some of this just doesn't seem sustainable, and yeah.
I know it's tough because we really want to support and encourage more construction, meet that housing need. And as many of you know, I mean, houses in the county are extremely expensive, and it eliminates a lot of people. So doing what we can to keep costs down. But I think right now this is really kind of an informational only. I think unless anybody has any other questions, you've really go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, as Aaron, I think it was $1.75. So again, it's a huge range of options. If you wanted to say, we want to be competitive with Washington County, we want to lower our SDCs to $7,000, that would mean that the rate the customer pays per month would go up about $1.75. So that's kind of the balance between a significant reduction in SDCs and the impact on rates.
I guess is like, what does the current prioritization requirements that we face, what are we prioritizing? And what helps us reach that specific goal around housing development? You know, it's unfortunate, like this just region is like wildly unaffordable. The metro area is very expensive compared to the rest of the country. Our housing costs are crazy expensive. It's more than just SDCs. It's a sticky widget that's quite controversial here. That dates back far before I was even born. So I don't know. I'm just, I guess, trying to find that balance as a board. I appreciate that, but that's my concern.
Yeah, I think we're in alignment on a lot of the issues, you know. As we know, seniors are on fixed income, so if it goes up, anything, that's an impact. I do like hearing, you know, it's $1.70 or $1 a month, which to me is pretty reasonable. So I think it's gives us kind of some food for thought. So again, I've really appreciated meeting with you privately to get educated on a lot of this stuff. I think you guys are doing an amazing job, and you keep up the good work. So if there's no other questions or comments, this will conclude our policy session for the afternoon. And we, on behalf of the board, thank you. We'll be adjourned.
Great. Good to see you.